What's up, guys? Mobility and flexibility are essential for maximizing your health and wellness. Many people tend to neglect this aspect of exercise because they have a misconception that it requires a lot of time. The truth is that just a little bit of effort can go a very long way. Just like anything else, the more that you work your mobility and your flexibility, the more improvements you're going to see. Here are some very simple exercises that you can perform as often as you'd like in an effort to minimize tightness, enhance range of motion, decrease risk of injury, and ultimately look, feel, and perform better. The only tools that you need are your shed fat resistance bands. All right, guys, so we're gonna work on mobility a little bit. Now, there are a few key areas that everybody needs to focus on. Shoulders, glutes, the general hip region, hamstrings, and our hips, our hip flexors specifically. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through a couple of different stretches that you can do utilizing the bands. And for each of those, I'm gonna give you an alternative that you can implement that does not require a band. And these are things that you could do on a regular basis. You can do them every day, multiple times a day. You're not gonna risk injuring yourself as long as you listen to your body and what it's telling you in terms of your limits. So the first one that we're gonna get into is we're gonna start with a little shoulder stretch. Now, this is gonna stretch both your shoulders as well as your triceps, and this is called an over-under shoulder stretch. At least that's what I refer to it as. In regards to the bands, if you're utilizing a band for this exercise, just remember the more resistance you have in the band, the greater the stretch can potentially become. So the black is gonna be our strongest, blue is second strongest, green is right there in the middle, followed by red and yellow, okay? So I would say initially start with the red and yellow bands, one or the other, and sort of find your comfort zone moving on from there. So I'm gonna start with a nice light band. This is called our over-under stretch. So the trickiest part of this stretch is actually getting it into position. So you're gonna take one band, loop it over your thumb, and you're gonna just set that over top of a shoulder, and you're gonna loop the other thumb of the underhand right here into that band on the other end. Now, this is looking at stretching both shoulders, so you can do it one of two ways. The first way that you can accomplish this is simply by pulling up, stretching this lower shoulder here, and you can hold that stretch 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. You don't need to do much more than 30 seconds, and then we can stretch the tricep of this top arm by pulling down on the band, okay? Now, again, hold this stretch for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, no more than 30. Or what you can do are pulses. So you can go from one stretch, hold it for a few seconds, and then to the other stretch, hold it for a few seconds. Guys, whatever you decide to do, it's gonna be effective in opening up that shoulder cavity, stretching your internal and external rotators, as well as getting those triceps. A lot of people spend a lot of time hunched over their smart devices or their desks, and it causes a lot of tightness in the shoulders. If your shoulders are tight and you're an exerciser, or even if you're just an average individual, you can get things out of whack. Things can get tight and immobilized, meaning that it just causes havoc in terms of your ability to function appropriately. Or if you do exercise, it can increase your risk of injury, so on and so forth. So guys, we always want to make sure that we take care of those shoulders. It's a great stretch for your shoulders. Okay guys, this next exercise is meant to target your glutes. Again, a lot of people spend a lot of time sitting or in a position that doesn't really activate the glute muscles, and that's not good for posture, that's not good for overall well-being. So we wanna make sure that they're not only functioning appropriately, but we wanna make sure that they're able to move through their full range of motion. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on what we call a glute stretch here in a 90 position, okay? So again, the more resistance you have on the band, the more stretch you can get. So if you're tighter and you need more resistance, you can use a stronger band, or if you're not able to get enough stretch with the light band and you're looking for more stretch, you can use a greater resistance band. Play around with these guys. My suggestion is always start with the lighter of all, the yellow or the red, and then sort of work your way up from there. So in order to do this next stretch here for our glutes, there's a couple steps to it. The first step is kind of getting the band into the appropriate position. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna use a heavy resistance band because I do have some tight glutes and I can withstand a little bit more discomfort, so I'm gonna utilize this guy. We're gonna have a seat on the floor, and we're gonna put the band on the bottom of one foot. It doesn't matter which foot you're using to start with because we're gonna get both sides. And you're gonna loop the other leg through, place the band above the knee, okay? And you're gonna cross that leg over top of the bottom leg. Now, make sure you keep your foot pointed up towards your face, your toes pointed up towards your face with the foot that has that band anchored around it, because if you let that foot go, the band could slide and kind of smack off into some random direction. So just sort of lock that band in place by keeping your toes pointed towards your face. Again, I'm crossed above the knee. That's my goal here, okay? And in order to allow this stretch to effectively do its job, what I want to do is I want to relax this leg as much as possible, okay? I want to allow this band to pull this knee towards this foot. I want it to pull that knee away from me, opening up my hip and stretching my glute. The other way that you increase the intensity of the stretch is by bringing the foot that has the band around it closer to your butt. So what you can do is start with a more extended position, let the band pull the knee away from the body. Once you feel comfortable with that, you can bring the foot closer, the heel of the foot that's out front closer to your backside, still allowing that band to pull the knee away from your body, and continue to work in that direction. The more comfortable you get, the more stretch you're looking for. Continue to bring that continue to bring that foot closer and closer to your backside. You can either move the foot or move your body, either way, but just bringing the left butt cheek closer to the left foot in this position is how I'm increasing that stretch, okay? Again, just like the other stretch, you can hold this for time. You can come in and out of the stretch, so you can relieve the stretch a little bit and then come back into it. Either way, if you're holding the stretch, you don't need to hold it for much more than 30 seconds. Once you've got that accomplished, we're gonna switch to the other side, same idea. So again, we're gonna hook the band under one foot. I'm gonna slide the other leg through and place the band above the knee. I'm gonna cross that leg over top, okay? And again, allowing my left knee now to get pulled away from my body towards the floor, towards that foot that's out front, keeping the toes on my right foot pointed up towards my face. And then to increase the stretch, I'm moving my heel and my butt closer and closer together, okay? Again, hold it for time, or you can work little pulses, but the two things to focus on are allowing this knee to get pulled away from you and working on getting your heel closer to your butt as you become more comfortable with the stretch. All right, guys, this third stretch is meant to target the hamstrings. Any client I've ever worked with, or any person that I've worked with in the gym, outside of the gym, trained with, has some tightness in their hamstrings. And again, it's partly due to the fact that we spend a lot of time in a seated position where that hamstring muscle is shortened. But just like with the glutes, if those hamstrings spend a lot of time in a shortened position, they start to sort of turn off a little bit, they become tight, and then that's just something that we have to fight through when we're exercising or just performing day-to-day activities in our lives that can cause a little bit of stress to the system and can kind of throw things out of whack and can be the epicenter of what eventually becomes a body-wide domino effect of compensatory movements. So again, regardless of what you're trying to accomplish, making sure that some of these things are working appropriately is fundamental. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick an appropriate resistance band. Again, always start with the lighter band if you're not familiar with these stretches. I'm familiar. I'm gonna use something a little bit stronger again for this one because I do have a little bit of tightness in my hamstrings and I wanna be able to work through it. And we're gonna do a little hamstring 90-90 pull, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have a seat. Now, just like with the glute stretch, what we're gonna do is work one side and then the other. And just like with the other stretches, we can pulse in and out of the stretch under control, or we can hold for time. Again, you don't really need to exceed 30 seconds. But what you're gonna do, pick a leg to start with, you're gonna loop your band around the bottom of your foot, okay? You're gonna take a grip on either side of the band so that you have some leverage to pull with. Can do overhand or underhand, it doesn't matter, just some position that's comfortable for you. And then you're gonna lay flat on your back, okay? Now, before we go into the stretch position, just remember that if you have a fair amount of resistance, you wanna take your time. So the goal here is to stretch the hamstring of the leg that has the band around it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna elevate that leg. Again, just like with the last stretch, I'm always thinking about keeping my toes pointed towards my face. We call that dorsiflexion. And I'm going to try to work on straightening this knee with my hip in a 90-degree position. That's why it's called a 90-90. So I'm in 90 degrees here. And if I want to increase the difficulty level. I can also get 90 degrees with the other hip, but you can also plant your foot. Doesn't really make much of a difference in terms of how much stretch you get here. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna lay all the way back so your back and your chest are nice and parallel to the floor, your head looking straight up at the ceiling or at your foot, and you're slowly going to try to increase how straight you're able to get that leg. You're going to try to decrease the flexion, so this is in a flexed position. You're going to try to eliminate that flexion by extending the knee, trying to keep that hip at 90 degrees until you start to get a good stretch in your hamstrings. Now, depending on where you're tight, you might feel a little bit more behind your knee or a little bit behind right above your knee, or you might feel it a little bit further up your hamstring, closer to your butt. But that doesn't make any difference because essentially what you're looking at is stretching where you are tight. So once you find that stretch and you can feel it, hold that position. Now, as I mentioned, you can pulse the stretch by sort of relaxing that leg for a second and then going back into it. You just want to make sure that you remain controlled if you do that. Or what you can do is you can hold the stretch. Now, once you get to a point where you're able to straighten that leg fully with that hip in that 90-degree position, now we're going to increase that stretch by pulling on that band, either with one or two hands. I recommend using two hands just so you don't lose control of the band and have it go shooting off on you. And you're going to pull yourself up towards that foot as you pull on the band, and you're trying to pull that band down and towards your body as well. So now I'm thinking about pulling this leg further back. So now I'm going further than 90 degrees here. And I'm thinking about bringing my torso and my head towards this leg, okay? Now you can really, really increase the amount of stretch you get by doing it in this manner. So regardless of what your ability is starting, you wanna take your time. You wanna make sure that you start with a light resistance band. You wanna make sure that you listen to what your body's telling you. You don't overstretch. One thing that I generally tell people when we're talking about static stretching and the discomfort that you can feel with it and where you should be aiming is if 1 is no discomfort at all and 10 is I feel like this muscle is gonna pop right off the bone, you wanna be somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 5, kind of right down the middle. And as you become more comfortable and you become more aware of your limits, then you can start to increase the intensity to a 6 or a 7. So just take your time, guys. And again, with that stretch, you obviously want to perform it on both sides. So again, on the other side, loop it under the foot, lay flat on your back, start with a little bit of flexion, try to get that knee straight with that hip in a 90-degree position. Then from there, you can bring the torso in and pull on the band to increase the stretch, guys. And just like I mentioned originally, work on the pulses, or you can go ahead and you can hold for up to 30 seconds or so on each side, guys. Okay, guys, this fourth stretch is meant to target your hips and your quads. Now, your hip flexors, that's one thing a lot of people hear about tightness existing and experience tightness existing, but it's not always just your hip flexors, which are very specific muscles. It could also be a muscle in your quadriceps group, which is also partly responsible for flexion of the hip. So it could be a little more quad, it could be a little bit more psoas or iliopsoas. But either way, this stretch is gonna help target that area. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna pick an appropriate resistance. Again, always start light, see how it feels and move up from there. I'm gonna start with some heavier resistance because I'm familiar with this stretch. Now this one I call my lazy man stretch because you actually get to lay on your side when you perform it. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take a band, you're gonna wrap it around a foot, doesn't matter. We're gonna hit both sides, so pick whichever side you'd like to begin with, and you're gonna lay on your side. Now, the goal here is to get your hip straight and fully extended, meaning it's not bent, the knee's not pushed up towards your chin. You're trying to get that knee back as far as you can, and that's the position you want to start from. So once you sort of get your hip fully opened, you're trying, this is a key note, very important, don't hyperextend your back. So don't arch your lower back when doing this. You want to try to keep your lower back in a nice neutral position. What you're going to do is you're going to take this band, and I'm going to rotate my leg a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. You're going to take the band, and you're going to get a good grip. Now I like to wrap my hand around it because I need a lot of torque on this stretch. I need a lot of tension to really stretch appropriately, but you don't have to do that. You can just go ahead and grab your band, with any kind of grip. But the goal here, regardless of which grip you choose, is to get a good grip on that band. Open that hip, gonna relax here, and I'm gonna pull that foot up towards the middle of my back. Now, when I'm performing the stretch, a lot of people also performing the stretch will have a tendency to allow their knees to come apart. Your goal should be to try to keep those knees pretty close together as you pull this stretch. Now, again, you can pulse this stretch, so you can pull into the stretch and then relax, pull into it, relax, or you can hold the stretch up to about 30 seconds. No need to do much more than that. And you're just gonna try to relax. The goal here is to open up those hip flexors, try to get a little stretch in that quad, and breathe. With all these stretches, your goal should be to breathe and relax. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Control your breathing. Don't fight the stretch. But again, know your limit. Listen to your body, okay? So once you get through on one side, you're gonna go ahead, set up on the other side, same thing. Get yourself in position. Get nice and comfortable, because again, we're trying to relax while we do this. Get your grip, get those knees close together, and pull, okay? Pull back, feel the stretch, listen to your body, find your edge, some people call it, your limit, where you know that you've gone far enough and you don't need to push past it. Breathe, relax, do the same thing that you did on the other side, either pulse, hold, it's completely up to you. Guys, this stretch can be highly effective, but you just want to make sure that you take your time, just like any other stretch, and you want to get the most out of it. So if you're fighting the stretch, it's not going to be as productive as if you give a little less stretch and you fully relax. Okay, I've got one more stretch for you guys that I think a lot of people can benefit from. Many people have lower back issues, generally some sort of tightness or discomfort. Now, this stretch is a great stretch for helping to alleviate that, but it's only a piece of the puzzle. So those other stretches, especially ones for your glutes and your hamstrings, you definitely want to be incorporating. Ones for your hip flexors that I showed you, you also really want to be incorporating, because a lot of times something in one of those areas can really be the root cause of the low back pain. But with that being said, it can still feel very good to stretch your lower back out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick an appropriate resistance for myself, which is a little bit stronger because I work on this a little bit more. One thing to keep in mind with this stretch is I'm going to instruct you to round your lower back, which is generally something you do not want to do in terms of exercise. If you're lifting something up, or you're performing a squat or a deadlift or something along those lines, you usually want to keep a nice neutral position in your lower spine, because your lumbar spine is not really meant to move a lot. It's a stability joint technically. So the goal is to try to maintain that nice neutral position. But with that being said, if we round the back in its entirety, we can kind of stretch those muscles that run along the spine through the lower back, where we experience a lot of tightness. So this is going to be one of those rare instances where I would say it's okay within reason to let your lower back round, because that's sort of how we're going to achieve the stretch that we're looking to achieve. So what you're going to do once you pick your appropriate resistance, again starting with light resistance if you're unfamiliar with the stretch, and then working your way up, you're going to take your band and place it under both feet, okay? Underneath both feet, and I'm going to turn to the side so you can sort of see what I'm doing. Now what I do have is I have both feet together. What I'm going to do is I'm going to either grab the band up high or grab the band lower, depending on my ability. I'm going to focus on trying to round my lower back and feel a nice stretch in those erector muscles, and drop down towards my feet and towards my shins. So with this, again, very important to listen to your body. Also very important not to try to stand up as you're doing the stretching. For this stretch, you should only be pulling into the stretch and not fighting the stretch and resisting that rounding of the lower back, because that's where you could get yourself into a little bit of trouble. So it's very important with this stretch in particular to breathe and to relax as much as possible, and just focus on listening to your body and finding your limit and not exceeding that, okay? So once you find your position with your hands that's appropriate, you're gonna use the band, deep breath in, and you're gonna exhale, and you're gonna pull down and round that lower back. And you can either hold, like we've mentioned with all the other stretches, or you can pulse. So you can go into the stretch a little bit and then come out of the stretch and relax. Come into the stretch, relax. And you can approach it either way. But the big thing, again, just to reiterate this one more time because it's very important, on this stretch, don't fight the stretch. Do not pull against that resistance. Only use that band to pull yourself deeper into the stretch, okay? You might not even need the band. If you find that you're so tight that you can't even get to the band, then you can perform that same exercise, just relaxing and letting the lower back round a little bit without a band. You can just kind of hang there, let the lower back stretch out, pulse a little bit so you can round, breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth, and then stand up to give a little bit of relief for a couple seconds, and then repeat. Or you can hold for up to 30 seconds. No need to do much more than that, guys. If you implement all of those stretches on a regular basis, a couple of things are guaranteed to happen. Either you're going to notice that you feel a lot better, generally speaking, have better posture, less back pain, less shoulder pain. You're going to perform better. So if you're physically active, you're going to notice that maybe your strength improves because you're not limited in your ability to produce range of motion at those major joints. Or you're going to have a combination of those things happening. And regardless of who you are, either experiencing one, two, or both of those things is going to make you a much more well-rounded individual in terms of your health and your wellness. And it's going to promote longevity in terms of feeling good, as well as being able to exercise and being able to maintain all those other things that you love to do in life, other hobbies that you have, spending time with your children, going out, hanging out with the family, going on trips, whatever it is. If you're mobile, you're going to feel better. If you feel better, you're going to enjoy things a lot more. So guys, please practice these stretches, implement them as often as you can. But again, when doing so, listen to your body and take it from there, man. Everybody have a healthy, happy, blessed day. If you've got more questions, please feel free to reach out to us at shedyourfat.com. Follow us on our Instagram pages at shedfat and at workout routine for more free content, guys. And we'll be talking to you soon. Hope everybody has a great one.